Eleanor Lerman, what a delight to have your book cross my path. King the Wonder Dog and Other Stories. I'm not generally a short story reader, but there is a beautiful German Shepherd on the cover,
Yeah.
and the title has a dog in it. And then I read about you and the fact that you've had a long life as a person writing literature. And
Yes.
that was something I admired in addition, because to keep on writing when you were quite young, when you were celebrated and won awards. Talk a little bit before we talk about some of these stories, which are profoundly interesting and unusual and powerful. They're quite something. They stayed with me a long time. They're still with me. I'm still bugged by some of the people.
Thank you.
The
Thank
dogs,
you.
no. I'm very happy about the dogs.
Yes.
But talk a little bit about what it's like to start your career with winning a Guggenheim and being finalists for awards. And how young were you then?
I was 21.
That's what I had a feeling. You were a kid.
Yes.
So, how did you embrace your ability to be a writer that young? And then how have you maintained it through all the decades that can beat us down?
I I think I've always been writing. My mother died when I was 13, but before she died, she gave me a little gray manual typewriter. That's all there was then, which is
Oh,
still sitting on my desk. So my mother must have known who I was.
wow.
Yeah, I was writing always, and recently through Facebook, reconnect with like kids I knew in elementary school, and one of them sent me like a letter our sixth grade teacher had written about how much she loved the class and what each child was good at. And then it was Eleanor Lerman, who will be a famous writer one day.
No.
So
What
I
a
must have
chill
been,
that must have given you. An odd chill, right?
I think it just was, yeah, this is what I'm gonna do.
Yes, an affirmation.
And then what happened was I left. We had my brother and I, a very difficult teenagerhood, childhood with a stepmother. It's like the quintessential evil stepmother. She wasn't evil, she was mentally ill and a schizophrenic stepsister. So I left when I was 18 and I went to live in the village, which in those days you could.
Yes, you could.
And of all things, I was managing a harpsichord workshop where we built harpsichords. I don't know why people want to build harpsichords, but they want to build them out of kits. It is now, Zuckerman Harpsichords is now an international harpsichord kit company. But then it was just me and a couple of girls sitting in like a ground floor big space, getting high, and Michael Zuckerman, who had made all these little strange little machines to make the harpsichord parts, like you have to wind wire and velvet. So we were sitting there doing that, and there was a blackboard on which I was supposed to write the parts that we needed to order. And instead of that, I was writing poems. And a man who I lived on Charles Street. He lived in a carriage house on Charles Lane. He was a film producer. In order to get his mail, he had to walk through the harpsichord workshop. And one day he stopped and said, "Who's writing these poems?" And I said, "Me." And he said, "You should get them published. They're very good." It had never
Wow.
occurred to me.
Wow. Because even getting poetry published is insanely difficult.
Like I said, no, it had never occurred to me. So I loved Leonard Cohen. I had no idea how to get anything published. So I wrote to the publisher of his first book, The Spice Box of Earth, which had taught me to write poetry. And I got a letter back from the president of whatever, I don't remember what publishing company it was, that said, "The only poet we publish is Leonard Cohen, but you might try these other places." And the first one on the list was, I forget which one it was. It wasn't the University of Massachusetts Press, but one of those.
Something like that.
Yeah, and they published the book. my
Come
first book of
on.
poetry.
This is quite amazing that
I
you were,
know, I know.
despite this complicated childhood, which clearly comes out in some of the characters in the short stories,
Hmm.
in a way that's so compelling and so visceral and real. Isn't that amazing that you had this gift for writing that a teacher, first your mother who was ill and dying, and then your teacher in 6th grade, and then this random man walking through the harpsichord mini factory, and then that a publisher was so nice to say, sorry, but try these people, and they
Hmm.
say yes. So now we fast forward to King the Wonder Dog and other stories. Obviously, you had a lot of life in between, but I think it's just very comforting and rewarding and encouraging to other people to know that there are people who start writing in their 70s, and there's people who start writing when they're children and they're gifted, and then they have early success, which I think getting a Guggenheim's high marks for success, and that either helps them, but at least it doesn't stop them, or maybe it stops them for a while, because it's also complicated, isn't it, being a writer? Getting affirmation, not getting affirmation. And you
Yeah.
clearly have kept on writing. And these stories in King the Wonder Dog, were they written over a long period of time, or have they been written more recently and then you compiled them?
I would say they probably were written over the course of a year. There actually
I
were
had
more,
that feeling that it was in a compact amount of time. They're each quite different from one another, but it didn't feel like you'd gone to the bottom drawer of the desk and pulled out a few that you had from 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It felt all very fresh.
yeah, and actually there were more stories, but it was the publisher, Brooke Warner of She Writes Press, when I had sent her all these stories, she said, why don't you take out the other ones and we'll just make it a book about people and dogs. And I think there's one cat in there.
There is.
Yeah. And so she was the one who saw it as it'll be King the Wonder Dog and other stories, and all of them be about people and their relationship with pets. And that's really the heart of the book is what it's like to be older, what it's like to be
Yes.
ill,
Yes.
and the interaction that you have with a pet.
Yes. And they're not cheery and uplifting. They're real. They're complicated. The
Yeah.
people are damaged in the way people can be damaged. And these dogs that are woven in their lives are quite different in each case. King the Wonder Dog is a really disturbing story because it depicts a man trying to hold his life together with only his sidekick, King, who does turn out to be, in a way, the wonder dog in many
Hmm.
ways for him, and a wife who is completely nuts. And yet they let her out of the insane asylum. Of course, they don't call it that anymore, but she
Yeah.
was in the loony bin. And this poor man has to deal with a completely psychotic, crazed, dangerous woman. And I think there are people who probably have to deal with these individuals, even today when theoretically we're more advanced in understanding the various mental illnesses. Is this what your stepmother was like?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. That
Eleanor,
was my
this is
stepmother.
just so brilliantly depicted. I don't know how you remembered it that well from just being a teenager, although I guess it's burned into your brain, right?
I have a younger brother. Younger. I'm 74, he's 70 now. But he's
He's in
always going to
another
be
he's in another story.
he's
Or
always
a
going to be the
version of
baby.
him.
Yes.
And a version of him is in another
Yes.
story, which is also lovely.
He's been my witness all my life. And we have talked about this, how lucky we both are that having a sibling who is really like your best friend, but has also been a witness to your life,
Yes.
and you've been a witness to his life, so that the stories of our childhood and working through what happened with my stepmother and my stepsister, we still talk about it because of the profound effect we know it has had on both our lives. But because he's the living witness,
Yes.
so it's not like having to recall these things. They're still very much alive. Now,
Interesting.
I think I made Cassandra in that story a little bit more. immediately difficult than my stepmother was. And my stepmother, there are many reasons to forgive her for what we went through. She herself had a traumatic childhood she was my father's second wife. My father was her second husband. Her first husband had been very difficult himself. But yes, it's a distillation of what my stepmother was like. And my father was nowhere near as interesting a person or someone. My father was not an artist, but my father wanted to be in vaudeville. That's how old my father,
Oh,
how
but
long
that's
ago.
sweet. That's what comes out is this man with a dream of
Yeah.
writing a book, and then he gets this idea he'd like to write a graphic novel. It's very interesting. And I think the depiction we see the collapse of this woman when she's brought back from the mental institution through the reaction of the dog. And I don't know if you had a dog growing up or if you just imagined the fear and trembling that a dog would have to smell and see and hear and feel a person spinning out of control, whether or not they're breaking all the china or not. It has to be so intense for a dog. And you, in all these stories, you help us understand what the dog must have been going through without
In
being
all,
anthropomorphic or cutesy or anything. It's just real. It's so real.
all the stories, the dogs are really a compilation of a dog and human feelings. The pets are, I'll say dogs, even though there is the one cat. The
Right.
dogs really are a reflection of the human beings in their life,
Yes.
and they're a way of helping, I hope, the reader understand the pain that the person is going through.
Yes, absolutely.
So the dogs really are an instrument for bringing the writer into the pain and the fear and the confusion of the person in the story. So
Definitely.
whether or not a dog would ever really behave like that or understand that, and they might, but it doesn't matter whether it's real or not.
But it feels so real. Your invention of these situations is so real. It feels like some element of it must have been. And then as a writer, you've turned it to make it into a full and complete and visceral story for the reader. I would love to have you read the section that I picked out in in a wonderful piece that does make me imagine that it has something to do with you and your brother because the main character does have all these old dogs. She's old and she's getting a little arthritic and slowing down. But she has taken in all these dogs and it's so dear how she's done it. And she has this brother who's isolated and lonely and he wishes she wouldn't put herself in this position. And she goes to help him recover from his cataract surgery. And it's just so sweet how he winds up at re-entering her life around this one last dog that she takes in. So I don't know if that sets up this bit of the reading, but I just want people to hear the voice of this story. It's a long one, but it's really worth it. So I leave it to you.
I must say in my brother's defense, if he ever sees this interview, my brother is a television producer and a journalist, and he's nothing like this delicate person. He would be,
Right.
I don't know what he
But
would
that's
think, but
great. No, but it's good that the brother is isolated and had to move to Jersey City because it's cheaper
yeah,
and his life hasn't amounted to much and he drinks too much. But the brother and sister are sweetly close and the dogs are what bring them together. So
yes.
read a bit about Old Dogs, which is this lady's life and how it brings she and her brother back together.
Okay. Old dogs. On his last visit, Stephen remembered sitting on the back steps of her house, his sister's house, a 1950s style ranch house that someone had built at the edge of a woods with a picture window that looked out on a quiet two-lane road and a wide grassy backyard fenced off from a meadow full of wildflowers. It was a pretty enough place, but was always full of dogs. Dogs on the sofa, dogs on the chairs, dogs lying in the sunlight that came through the picture window, dogs in the laundry room, dogs on the rugs. While they were sitting on the steps, watching three of the current bunch of dogs chasing each other through the grass, Stephen told Jane that he was worried about how she was managing because of her arthritis. He had watched her struggling with dishing out the dog's food at their meal times. Her hands were beginning to look like the bones inside them were permanently mangled, and her fingers didn't seem to be listening to what her brain was telling them to do. Excuse me. My my voice always fails me.
If it fails you completely, I can read on, or you carry on. Either way.
No, I can't.
Okay.
I know your heart's in the right place running this old folks' home for dogs, but doesn't it get to be a bit much sometimes? Stephen had asked. You must have 15 different kinds of prescription dog medicine in the kitchen. And I looked at that schedule you've got on the wall about who gets which pills when. It's a lot to keep track of, especially with the trouble I can see you're having with your hands. Ha, my hands, Jane said. You should see what my back looks like on an x-ray. I think the last one I had even scared my doctor. So why keep this up? Because I like dogs. You know that. I can't imagine living without a dog. So just have one. Get some nice little puppy. Stevie, Jane said, and Stephen heard the big sister sound in her voice. Do you remember after Teddy died? I thought my heart would break. I had him for 17 years, from the time he was 6 weeks old. I thought I could never get another dog, but just one day of living here without a dog running around, it was too lonely. So I drove down to Kingston to the big ASPCA shelter they have there, and I saw this adorable little brown puppy that I liked right away. I took him into the room where they let you sit with the puppies to play with them and decide if you want the one you picked out, when it suddenly occurred to me that if the puppy lived to be as old as Teddy, then I'd be like 85 if I lived to be that old. Don't say that, Stephen said. Don't say if. But if is the right word. So how could I get a puppy? It might outlive me, and then who would take care of it? And don't say you would. That's not the point. But I would. And I said that's not the point. So I put the puppy back in the kennel and went to look at the older dogs. There were a couple of 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds. Those were easily going to be adopted soon enough. But then there was a kennel with a big, sad-looking shepherd mix lying against the wall, and there was a sign that said he was 11 years old. 11, lying all alone in a cage, hunched up against a concrete wall. I asked about him, and the lady I was talking to said there was another dog there too, about the same age. It's a no-kill shelter, thank goodness, but that means these poor dogs just live in these cages until they die. So I took them both. I remember you telling me about that. Roxy and El Paso, right? Those were their names. Yes, Roxy and El Paso. A couple months later, the shelter called me and said some people had dropped off a 10-year-old lab whose owner had died, and no one else in the family wanted the dog. So they asked if I'd be willing to take her. The poor dog was so confused, so terrified when I took her home. But eventually she figured out that someone loved her again. That's how it started. I became the old lady who takes in old dogs. It's okay with me to be that person. But a lot of them are sick. And even if they're not, they're old, so they die, Stephen said. Yeah, that's what happens when you get old. You have to take a lot of medicine and then you die. But in between, if you're a dog and somebody takes care of you, you get to run around in the grass with a couple of friends if you can. And if you can't, you just hang out feeling safe and happy. If you're a person, you get to watch a lot of cable TV and eat as many guilt-free potato chips as you want. Did I tell you that's my new thing? I'm eating potato chips for breakfast if that's what I feel like doing.
Oh, Eleanor Lerman, I tell you, well done and well read. And
Thank you.
it's what made me just love this book and love you. It's in the middle of the book, so I had to read a lot of it to get here. But I thought this is a sentiment that everyone who listens to this show will just say, hooray, bravo, yes. Because it's so dear and so touching and so simple. And to those who don't do these kind of St. Francis activities, we have these sort of, yeah, but a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of work. And to the people who do them and celebrate this work, if you will, this love work for old dogs, yeah, but this is what you do. You just let them do this and have this moment in life, however long it lasts. And it's such a quiet philosophy, but it's deep at the same time. And just having the brother and sister discuss it as old people themselves, it just, I think it puts into perspective what we do for dogs, what they do for us, how they let us see ourselves and take care of ourselves, even if we're just in the process of taking care of them. I think there's a great deal of that in the book. And so this is just a fabulous story. And I'm really glad the editor said keep it all dogs because I started to read and I thought, ooh, I hope a lot of the stories have dogs in them because then it'll be like really relevant to the show. And they do. There's one about the pet sitter who kidnaps the dog. I was just beside myself. Did you just invent that out of whole cloth? Did you imagine what if somebody had a pet sitter with a little daughter who loves the dog and you're just like, yeah, I'm going to keep it. Screw you. It's a great story, but it had my blood pressure rising. It was so well depicted. Was that a completely a figment of your imagination, or did this ever happen to someone you know?
No, that really was just a complete figment of my imagination. But it was, again, the whole situation. The
Yes,
dog doesn't really do anything in the story very much. It's just being a dog in the story. But the point was about when you're older, fear, and that fear comes in all kinds of guises. And in
yes,
this case, it comes in the guise of a pet sitter who sort of kidnaps the dog because she thinks her daughter wants it. But again, the dog really is just there to be part of the whole, all the swirling things about fear and getting older and
yes.
being ill and trying
That's
to
right.
recover from being ill.
Because in fact, she goes to the hospital for a month. The character has gone to the hospital for a month previously to the story,
Hmm.
and the pet sitter took care of the dog then and
Right,
uses that as a kind of verbal weapon against her when she says, but you abandoned the dog. It's like,
right.
well, I paid you to take care of the dog. I was in the hospital. And the fact that she knows she can't take as active an involvement in the dog's life in terms of walks as she'd like to, but she pays a lot of money to someone to do it. So the idea is, yes, you get old and you could tell yourself, I shouldn't have a dog because I'm not all that good at walking or maybe not in the bad weather. But she finds a way, and she's not of great means, but she finds a way to
Mhm.
afford it so she can have a dog in her life. And otherwise, she would be isolated and alone and even more afraid. And the dog just has to be to make her life complete.
The dog is, it gives her some purpose
Yes,
and it's something
exactly.
to take care of, which
Yes.
is important. If you don't have a person or a child to take care of, at least you have this little dog to take care of.
It makes a huge difference.
Yes.
And it's a good argument for people of any disability, whether it's age plus disability or other disabilities that precede older age, that dogs have a really important part in their life. But what I love about the stories in King the Wonder Dog and other stories is that none of them is predictable. None of them has, we don't imagine what the story's going to be about or where or how it will end, but it draws us in. I think that is a big part of your gift. You plunk us into these people's lives and we understand them right away. We know who they are even if we've never met somebody just like that. We get it. I think you get these characters and you just infuse them with light and love and longing and fears and all those human emotions and the dogs are right there by their side.
I think all the people in the story, in one way or another, with one exception, that's well, not really the artist and his cat, but in all the stories, the women, I think at least, are a reflection of me because, again, I'm older. I've
Yes.
had enough illnesses for a lifetime. And so I know what it feels like, or I can imagine what it feels like. I think it's in that story that the woman is, she goes to Macy's and she can't find the dress department that she remembers. And it's in a different place and none of the clothes fit. And we've
It's
all
so
had
real. It's so real.
we've all
Wait,
had that
they moved
experience.
the Rice Krispies. Where are the dresses?
And
Eleanor,
nothing fits.
and
Nothing
nothing
looks
fits.
right.
And it's not like the old days. And you're sorry you went at all. And then you go home to your dog. Eleanor, we've run out of time, but this really is a marvelous book and going to give so much joy to a lot of people. And in some cases, just to be happy their life is better than the lives of some of the people in the stories. Thank you for writing it. Thank you for continuing to write. I hope you will continue to do that for many more years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you.